What if the next evolution of GLP-1 treatment wasn't more weight loss, but fewer injections? What if maintenance didn't mean weekly dosing, but once a month? That idea quietly surfaced on Pfizer's earnings call last week. In a moment that wasn't hyped or highlighted, Pfizer Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Albert Bourla said, "For the first time, we have shown that a GLP-1 receptor agonist peptides can be administered monthly while maintaining the potential for competitive efficacy and safety." That's not just about convenience, because Pfizer didn't stop there. They said they plan to run a phase 3 study designed to move people who are already stable on weekly GLP-1 therapy onto a monthly dose. Not just starting new patients, switching successful ones. That's not experimentation. That's a very clear signal about where they think this market is going and how they plan to enter it. So today the question isn't whether Pfizer had a solid quarter. The question is whether Pfizer is building something meaningful in obesity medicine, or whether they are arriving too late to matter. And more importantly, what does that mean for those of us treating the disease of obesity right now? It's always Lorraine's question. Welcome to The Downsized. My name is Christopher Durham. My wife Lorraine and I have lost more than 150 pounds together using GLP-1 medications. I started at 286.4 pounds, and today I maintain at about 185 pounds. We began this adventure in September of 2023, and like many of you, we have paid out of pocket for every dose. Before we go further, I need to say clearly that I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice, also not a financial advisor, so this is not investment advice. If you're considering starting, stopping, or changing treatment, please work with your healthcare professional. What we do here is a little bit different than most. We listen carefully to what these pharmaceutical companies say in their earnings calls. We read the transcripts, we look at the numbers, and then we translate what it actually means for patients. Not hedge funds, not analysts, but patients. If that kind of breakdown is helpful for you, please like this video and subscribe. We publish videos every day on GLP-1 medications, obesity, treatment, pricing, policy, access, and interviews with people like you. This is part 3 of our 4-part series examining last week's earnings calls from Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, Pfizer, and Amgen. Lilly felt like a company expanding from strength. They're really coming out of the gate hard. They're capturing share. Novo felt like a company defending legacy leadership under pressure, and the pressure is real for them. Pfizer feels different. Pfizer feels like a company deciding whether it truly wants to compete in the most important therapeutic category of this decade. Pfizer held its fourth quarter and full year 2025 earnings call on February 3rd, 2026. The discussion covered results for the quarter ending December 31st, 2025, and outlined strategy heading into 2026 and beyond. On the call were Albert Bourla, Chairman and CEO, Dr. Chris Boshoff, Chief Scientific Officer and Head of R&D, and David Denton, the CFO. Obesity was not buried in this call. It wasn't treated as optional. Bourla described obesity and adjacent conditions as the foundation of our strategy in what could be a $150 billion market. That's not a side program, that is strategic language, and of course it is. They're talking to analysts. And when analysts began asking questions, they did not ask casually. They asked about switching strategies, dosing intervals, competitive weight loss, tolerability, global pricing, and whether monthly dosing could hold up against weekly leaders. In other words, the room took this seriously. So today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what Pfizer said about the business, about the pipeline, and about its GLP-1 strategy, and talk about what it could mean for patients watching the space closely. Before we dive into the science, we need to understand the scale of this company. Pfizer is certainly a household name. You see their commercials all the time. Pfizer generated approximately $62.6 billion in revenue in 2025. That's $62 billion in 1 year. Now, many of you know them for their COVID vaccines. COVID sales fell sharply, which slightly reduced total revenue compared to the prior year. But when you remove COVID products, Pfizer's core business actually grew. Well, now why does that matter? Because this is not a small biotech placing a long shot bet on obesity or a little startup hoping to sell to somebody else. This is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, deciding whether obesity medicine will help replace revenue as other drugs lose patent protection over the next few years. They invested more than $10 billion into research and development in 2025 alone. They specifically said R&D spending increased in part because of obesity product candidates. This is not theoretical investment. It is capital being deployed now for potential approvals starting in 2028, which means this is not a short-term story. So no, you can't go buy a Pfizer obesity drug right now. It is a long-term strategic decision, and that's where this becomes interesting. Because entering obesity medicine in 2028 is not about chasing headlines. It is about deciding whether Pfizer wants to become a permanent player in this category or simply participate at the margins. At the same time, the rest of Pfizer's business is growing. The core portfolio grew roughly 6% operationally for the year and even faster in the fourth quarter. So Pfizer is stabilizing, but stability is not the same as growth, and growth is where the future pressure comes in. Over the next few years, Pfizer expects several major drugs to lose patent protection. When that happens, lower cost alternatives typically enter the market and revenue can drop quickly. On the call, they were open about this. They described entering what they call a loss of exclusivity cycle between 2026 and 2028. That's the window when existing revenue begins to compress. It shrinks, right? Things have gone to generic. People have cheaper options. They're not buying the original patented products. The patent has expired. And it helps explain why obesity is being framed so deliberately as part of what comes next. They're trying to get in on the gold rush. They're trying to make up for money they're going to lose with patents. That tells you obesity is already absorbing real capital, not as a side bet, but as a potential future growth engine. Looking ahead, Pfizer guided towards total revenue in the range of roughly $59.5 to $62.5 billion for 2026, while acknowledging that about $1.5 billion in pressure is expected from upcoming patent losses, which raises the central question behind everything they said about GLP-1s on the call. Is obesity simply an opportunity, or is it becoming a replacement for strategy, or do they actually want to help people? Listening closely, it sounded much more like it's a replacement strategy. They're not counting on obesity to support revenue today. There's no GLP-1 product contributing to their numbers yet. Instead, they are building towards potential approvals starting in 2028, just as those patent pressures begin to intensify. And obesity appears to be one of the pillars they are preparing for that transition. Which leads to the next question. If Pfizer is building for the future, what exactly are they building? Listening to Pfizer's leadership on this call, it becomes clear that they are not trying to enter the obesity market in the same way Lilly did, or defend it the way Novo is now. They're trying to enter it differently. Their lead obesity program, PF3944, is designed to be an ultra-long-acting GLP-1 receptor agonist that could be administered monthly instead of weekly. Dr. Chris Boshoff, Pfizer's chief scientific officer and president of research and development, explained that the molecule is engineered to bind to the GLP-1 receptor while still attached to albumin. That allows it to stay in circulation longer without losing activity. That design is what makes extended dosing possible. The goal here is straightforward. Maintain meaningful weight loss while reducing how often patients need to inject. Amir Malik, Pfizer's chief U.S. commercial officer, emphasized that combining competitive efficacy with a lower medication burden through a monthly dose creates a value proposition that could resonate with patients, providers, and payers because of persistency and simplicity. Persistency is the key word. This strategy assumes that long-term adherence is one of the real challenges in obesity treatment, and we've seen reports on this. The numbers say that it is. And it assumes that reducing dosing frequency could help patients stay on therapy longer. That frames competition differently. Pfizer's not just asking whether they can start patients on treatment. They are asking whether they can help patients stay on it. That thinking becomes even clearer in how they described future trials. Albert Bourla, as I said, he's the CEO, outlined plans for a phase 3 study that would evaluate switching patients who are already stable on weekly GLP-1 therapy to a monthly dose. Not initiating new treatment, transitioning ongoing care. That suggests Pfizer may be positioning itself less as a starting point and more as a maintenance option. Lose weight on a weekly therapy, maintain it on something simpler. They also made clear that this is not just a U.S. story. Alexander de Germay, Pfizer's chief international commercial officer, highlighted that obesity treatment outside the United States could represent about 40% of the global opportunity. He also noted that willingness to pay out of pocket has been stronger than expected in several mature markets, with patients already spending a few $100s per month. For patients who are paying themselves, convenience is not cosmetic. It has real value. Fewer injections can mean fewer missed doses and fewer disruptions over time. Malik also acknowledged that the obesity population is diverse, with different starting points, preferences, comorbidities, and expectations. That points towards a portfolio approach. Turns out both Lilly and Novo are approaching it that way as well. Rather than trying to dominate with one drug, Pfizer appears to be building options that could fit different phases of treatment. When analyst asks how monthly dosing compares to the weekly weight loss seen with current market leaders, Dr. Boshoff described the projected results as competitive. Not superior, competitive. The differentiation is not maximum efficacy. It is treatment experience. Monthly dosing is the wedge they're trying to drive into the market. So Pfizer's positioning, at least today, does not look like an attempt to outpace Lilly or Novo on day one. It looks more like an effort to offer something patients might live with long term. And to support that approach, they're building beyond a single injectable therapy. Which brings us to the bigger pipeline. So what does Pfizer actually have in development? Because positioning only matters if the science and timing support it. Pfizer's lead obesity program is PF3944, an ultra-long-acting injectable GLP-1 receptor agonist designed for monthly dosing. Dr. Boshoff walked analysts through the phase 2b VESPER-3 study, which evaluated monthly maintenance dosing following a short titration period. At 28 weeks, placebo-adjusted weight loss was about 10% for the lower planned phase 3 dose and 12.3% for the medium dose. Pfizer also shared model-based projections suggesting that a higher monthly dose could approach roughly 16% placebo-adjusted weight loss at the same time point. Boshoff described the results as robust, statistically significant weight loss across all doses tested, and noted that there was no observed plateau at 28 weeks, meaning patients were still losing weight at that stage of the study. For people living with obesity, that distinction matters. The difference between a strong result and a peak result is whether progress continues. Pfizer's argument is not that this therapy will outperform everything currently available. It is that competitive weight loss combined with fewer injections could change how sustainable treatment feels over time. Tolerability was also discussed in detail. Boshoff explained that when patients transitioned from weekly dosing to a four-fold equivalent monthly dose, there was no meaningful spike in severe gastrointestinal events. He noted that there was only one severe nausea, one severe vomiting, no severe diarrhea. Importantly, phase 3 studies will allow dose adjustments that were not permitted in phase 2. That flexibility could influence how patients experience treatment in real-world settings. Phase 3 development is already underway through the VESPER-4 program, which includes the higher weekly dosing equivalent to the projected monthly regimen. Pfizer plans to run approximately 10 phase 3 studies across obesity and related comorbidities. But PF3944 is not the only component of the strategy. Pfizer is also advancing an ultra-long-acting amylin analog called PF3945. In early data discussed on the call, this agent demonstrated about 8.4% placebo-adjusted weight loss at day 36 as a monotherapy. Pfizer is also studying it in combination with PF3944, and early combination results showed approximately 5% weight loss at day 8. These are early findings, but they point towards a possible layered approach, combination therapy for enhanced efficacy. Boshoff said Pfizer believes this combination could deliver best-in-class efficacy with monthly dosing. Updated data are expected later this year with further development planned. Pfizer is also building an oral pathway. They have in-licensed oral GLP-1 candidate currently in phase 1 and are developing a potentially first-in-class oral GIP receptor antagonist in phase 2. In addition, early-stage work is underway on injectable peptides that could potentially extend dosing intervals even further. This signals that Pfizer is not focusing on a single breakthrough product. They are building a portfolio, and timing is central to understanding what this could mean. Albert Bourla, Pfizer's chairman and CEO, stated that the company is targeting the first of a series and potential approvals in 2028. That places Pfizer's entry several years into the future. The monthly GLP-1 is entering large phase 3 programs now. The amylin combination would follow. The oral GLP-1 remains earlier in development. So for patients currently using therapies like Zepbound, Mounjaro, Wegovy, or Ozempic, Pfizer is not building an immediate option. It's just not going to be here yet. If successful, that could mean additional GLP-1 options reaching patients toward the end of the decade. Not as first movers, but as alternatives designed around convenience, combinations, and potentially broader flexibility. And that raises the question of what success would actually mean. When I step back from everything Pfizer shared on this call and think about it through the lens of someone actually living on these treatments, what stands out is not a company trying to win today, but a company deciding what kind of role it wants to play tomorrow, deciding whether it actually wants to help patients. We often talk about these companies as potential heroes, not because we're looking for a champion, but because this is a disease that needs companies willing to expand care, improve livability, support people over time, and actually care about human beings. So the question isn't just whether Pfizer can compete, it's whether Pfizer could become a different kind of hero. And one way to understand that is through something we talk about a lot here: cars. I use the analogy all the time because the future obesity toolbox is not going to be one vehicle. It's going to look more like a garage, or more like driving down your local motor mile and there's a Honda dealership, a Mercedes dealership, a Hyundai dealership. There's all these options that'll get you somewhere, but they're different prices, different speeds, different features, different tools for different needs. Right now, Lilly is building across performance and versatility. Retatrutide looks like the Corvette of the category, high-powered and pushing the edge of what's possible. Tirzepatide has been more like a Chevy truck, strong, dependable, capable of doing real work across conditions. Or Forglipron, if it delivers as hoped, could become the Honda Civic, accessible, practical, designed to get more people moving. Wegovy feels more like the Honda Accord, the reliable mainstream option that brought millions into the category and continues to carry a large share of patients today. So where does Pfizer actually fit in? Pfizer doesn't appear to want to build a Corvette. They're not trying to out-truck the truck. They're not even chasing the Civic. What they seem to be aiming for is something closer to a Volvo. Not built to win the race, built to last. Built for comfort, built for safety, built for the long haul. Monthly dosing starts to look less like a technical tweak and more like a design philosophy. Combination therapy becomes less about pushing harder and more about making treatment livable. If Lilly's focus has been performance and Novo's has been reliability at scale, Pfizer's path to become the hero would likely come through sustainability. Not the fastest, not the most aggressive, but the one designed to help people stay on treatment over time. Now, I'll tell you, Lorraine and I have now been in maintenance both for more than a year. And as we look forward on maintenance, and maintenance is really this thing I like to call life, the period of maintenance is significantly longer than your period of weight loss. So this is a conversation we're deeply concerned about, right? I want to be able to maintain my weight, my health, and all the benefits that I've gained from these medications. So if there's a medication, a drug, a company out there that can solve for that problem in a better, more accessible, more affordable way, absolutely, I'm interested. For most of us, this is not really about finding the strongest therapy for a short window. It's about finding something we can live with. If Pfizer succeeds, success will not mean replacing Lilly or Novo. It would mean becoming another credible option in a space where the number of meaningful choices still matters. More serious competitors can shift negotiating dynamics, expand supply, and widen the conversation around affordability over time. That doesn't happen overnight, but direction matters. If Pfizer doesn't succeed, the opposite holds true. Innovation remains concentrated, alternatives remain limited, and patients continue to depend on fewer sources for care. Trust will ultimately determine which path unfolds. Trust in this category isn't built on announcements. It's built dose by dose. Pfizer's timeline means they are not an option today, but if they follow through and deliver data that holds up, they could eventually offer something distinct. Not the most aggressive therapy, but one designed for long-term use. In a disease, a chronic disease, that requires a lifetime of management, not weeks of intervention. That distinction matters. Because the goal is not just getting somewhere, the goal is staying. But staying there requires more than convenience. It requires affordability. If Pfizer truly wants to be a hero, I know, we're all skeptical. Do any of them really want to be the hero? Probably not, but I will continue to call them that. The one designed for the long haul, then the real test will not just be whether the science works. It will be whether people can actually afford to stay in the driver's seat. A treatment built for long-term use only fulfills its purpose if long-term use is financially possible. So if Pfizer wants to be the hero in this story, the path isn't just monthly dosing or combinations. It's pairing sustainability of treatment with sustainability of cost. Because the future of obesity care is not just about innovation, it's about access. And in a market where access still depends heavily on price, another credible competitor wouldn't simply change market share, it would change the conversation. This has been part 3 of our 4-part series examining last week's earning calls from Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, Pfizer, and Amgen. Tomorrow we'll turn to Amgen, which is approaching this category from a very different angle. This series isn't about cheering for any one company. It's about understanding the decisions that shape access to treatment for those of us living with the disease of obesity. If this breakdown was helpful, please like this video and subscribe. My name is Christopher Durham, and we are The Downsized.